Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution is really a very, very important and a major revolution that transformed the world. It is Industrial Revolution that gave rise to capitalism. Okay, and capitalism versus socialism debate, and so various political systems. Okay, so you can see the modern world is characterized by and shaped by advances in technology as reflected in Industrial Revolution. Okay. When did this happen? This, you can say, took place between 1750 to 1850 plus 1750 to 1850. 1750 to 1820 or 1820 plus, you can say it is first Industrial Revolution. From 1822, then a major change in the process of production, which made mass production possible and mass consumption possible, and factory system came, urbanization came, with this major cities came, specialization came. Okay. So in all these ways, industrialization changed the world. And this also linked to colonialism. How it is because of Industrial Revolution, colonialism on that scale became possible and also profitable. Why? Because Great Britain is here and other countries, Colony 1, Colony 2, Colony 3, Colony 4. These colonies were giving raw material, and European powers or Great Britain is making the products and using colonies as market. So this essential relationship, raw materials, taking raw materials and then these countries as market sources, is also made possible because of Industrial Revolution. And Industrial Revolution also increased the connections. For example, railways, telegraph. Okay, so entire communication system. And also later war technology. So, and you know, from this colonization only, colonialization only, modernization spread. Ideas spread. So, Industrial Revolution, in that sense, played an extremely important role in shaping what we call modern world. So let us look into what are the origins of this and how this came to be possible. Okay, so here I'll stop for a minute. Okay, tell me, you have any questions?
In one word, industrial revolution is an agent of social change.
Industrial revolution is the means.
Is an agent of social
Is the
change.
agent, yes, is the agent of social change. Yes. Industrial revolution is the technological backbone behind everything, almost everything that we call modernization. So tell me, among all the religions, among all the revolutions, English Revolution, American and French and industrial, which is the most important revolution?
Industrial revolution.
Industrial revolution. Okay. It is a knitting factor. It is a technological base. We can't think of anything of modern world without industrialization. We don't know what would have been without industrialization. Think of India with only villages and handicrafts and present day India. What is the difference? Industrial revolution. Industrial revolution that started in Europe and spread all over the world through the means of colonialism. Okay, is it clear? Okay, let us see how it all started. Okay. It all started, I mean, going by the developments that happened much before Industrial Revolution. You can say modern world started with discoveries of new lands, as well as new routes to the old lands. And it was Europe that discovered new lands as well as new routes to the old lands. First, why did it have to do this? And how did it know that there was world in the first place, something like Asia? How did it know something like India? Here you need to know that Muslims played an intermediary role in Europe knowing about the world. Okay. One example to remind you is that numbers developed in India, for example, came to be known as Arabic numbers in Europe. Why were they called Arabic numbers? Because they learned them through Arabs. Okay. And you have heard what is called Renaissance. Okay, Renaissance. Do you know what Renaissance is? Renaissance is Europeans read about their ancient past, science, philosophy, technology, political system, okay, and took interest in them for a certain period. And that period was called Renaissance. And do you know how this Renaissance started? They learned about their past through Persian texts, through Persian and Arabic texts. It was Arabic, they were translated from Latin. I mean, they were translated for original languages to Arab, and then came back to English and other European languages. So Muslims played an important role. So in Europeans learning about themselves and also about the other parts of the world. Okay, so that's what happened. And why did they want to find new routes in the first place? Because there were some problems. For example, in 1453, this particular city, Constantinople, fell into the hands of Ottomans, and they were creating some problems. And Europeans were more interested in finding direct route to the east. And then by that time, some technology related to navigation improved, including navigational charts and magnetic compass. And this exploration was led by Portuguese and Spanish. Portuguese and Spanish first, and then Dutch, and later English. Okay. In the context of India, Christopher Columbus thought of getting to India by heading west, but discovered instead America. But he was interested in India. But the man who finally made it to India was Vasco da Gama. He was the first to come around the tip of Africa and sail on to India in 1498. And by 1510, Portuguese were in Goa. Okay. So why these new routes? These new routes are for the purpose of trade. For the purpose of trade. And trade gave new opportunities, profits, materials, markets. Okay, so it all started with discovery of new lands, and then next important development took place, that was scientific revolution. Okay, what was this scientific revolution about? Scientific revolution had two elements. That is, one element was purely related to science. And another element was, what were the implications of this kind of thinking and reasoning? And what did it mean for our understanding of the world? Okay. And one very important person in the scientific revolution was Copernicus. 1473 to 1543, from Poland. He criticized geocentric universe. Bible believed that the earth was at the center of the universe, and this man published his Revolution of Heavenly Bodies in the year of his death, 1543. He knew this before, but he didn't want to criticize the church, and so he was cautious enough to publish in the end, near his death. And it was such a radical idea that even reformists like Luther and Calvin ridiculed the idea. So what did this mean? This meant something of science, but it also meant that Bible could be wrong and church could be wrong, which means word of God or the priest or religion could be wrong, and it could be made to be wrong, it could be proved to be wrong through reasoning, questioning. So this is one of a foundational or landmark development in the history of modernization. So 1543 is one very important day. And next came Kepler, 1571 to 1630, was a German, and formulated 3 laws of celestial mechanics, which are now called Kepler's laws, reinforcing Copernicus' view of the universe. And then came Galileo Galilei, 1564 to 1642. He's an Italian professor. He improved a telescope by which one can see the heavenly bodies. One can observe heavenly bodies and see for himself, see for oneself that the earth was not the center of the universe. And this finally overthrew Aristotle's system. But then church forced him to confess that he was wrong. So that was how he escaped being called heretic and punished by the church. And then came Isaac Newton, 1642 to 1727. His work Principia Mathematica, 1687, is one of the greatest works in the entire science. If you notice these years, you can say scientific revolution started from 16th century, 1540, 16th century. Okay. Newton is one very important person. These are all very important people. But scientific revolution gave rise to thinking in other areas of life and society. That is called enlightenment. It's called enlightenment. Enlightenment extended the ideas of scientific revolution to understanding man and society. Not simply natural world. And some of the people who belong to the Enlightenment was Thomas Hobbes, Englishman, John Locke. Okay, these two are related to English Revolution. English Revolution. And Voltaire and Rousseau inspired French Revolution. Hume, Adam Smith, Kant, Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin involved in American Revolution. Okay. So enlightenment is said to be a phenomena related to 17th and 18th century. So you can see these are end of 17th century, 1670 and 18th century, 17th and 18th century phenomena in Europe. This is called enlightenment. So the difference between scientific revolution and enlightenment is about thinking about the society, about man, and creating institutions based on that. So enlightenment involved all these revolutions, and before scientific revolutions, and industrial revolution, which was between 1750 plus, included or inspired by the spirit of enlightenment. Why was it so? Because industrial revolution was also about thinking, reasoning, designing new machines, and involved certain economic ideas, political ideas that finally led to industrial revolution, and that took place first in England. Okay, so these are the main events. We'll wait for a minute. Okay, any questions on this? Tell me, are these words clear to you? Because you come across these words very, very frequently. Scientific revolution, enlightenment. Okay, what is the time period and who are the people associated and what is their significance?
Sir, it is the Renaissance which
Can you
led to-
tell me precise year in which modern world started? If you are asked to identify one year.
1453. No?
1453. Why 1453?
1750.
Or 1543?
Yeah, 1543 is also possible, sir.
1750, sir.
17?
50.
1750 is too recent. 1750. By 1750, tell me what happened. So many things happened. English Revolution took place. Okay. So what is the significance of 1543?
The first questioning was done by Copernicus.
Exactly. 1543. Okay. 1543. But 1543 is not part of Enlightenment. Okay. 1543 is just one event. It is a part of scientific revolution, but it is not a part of Enlightenment. Which can be taken as a beginning of enlightenment? Which thinker can be taken as a beginner of enlightenment? Hobbes. Hobbes and Locke. Who are the thinkers before English Revolution?
Machiavelli. Machiavelli was there.
Okay. What did you say?
Machiavelli.
Machiavelli was no. What did you say about Machiavelli?
No, before English Revolution.
No. Who are the people who influenced English Revolution?
I mean, people involved in scientific revolution.
People who?
Who are part of scientific revolution.
People who are a part of. You mean to say Copernicus influenced English Revolution?
No,
Locke,
not.
Locke.
Locke. And before Locke, why did Locke write what he wrote? To whom he was responding and reacting to?
I don't know.
Responding and reacting to Hobbes. Okay. So Hobbes, you can say Enlightenment began with Hobbes. Hobbes. And Locke and Newton were contemporaries. Okay. So you can think scientific revolution began with Copernicus and Enlightenment began with Hobbes. Okay. You can take thinkers associated with each revolution. English Revolution, American Revolution, and French Revolution. And then certain economic and philosophical ideas. Naveen, you wanted to ask something?
Yes, sir. When did the Renaissance started? May not be specific here.
No, Renaissance was about during the modern period only, 1500, around that. Machiavelli belongs to Renaissance, I think. 1500 plus. It's a part of modern world. During the Renaissance, old scriptures came to light during Renaissance. And that gave rise to scientific revolution. Scientific revolution gave rise to enlightenment. And as a part of enlightenment, industrial revolution took place.
Sir, and then we have
and due to industrial revolution backed by colonialism, the world changed. Globalization took place. So that was how European ideas spread all over the world. Is it, Anand, today there is one question on why did these things happen only in Europe, you know, in paper one. You can go through. Okay, so
So it is first in the Europe, first
why
only
in
in the
Europe? Yes, why in Europe? All these things. This gives a base at many places. Okay.
Sir, how did old scriptures help in Renaissance?
How did?
Old scriptures help in Renaissance.
Okay. What are these old scriptures? They're about Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, and Cicero, some political thinking. And Aristotle was involved in so much of scientific work. And they were not impacted and prejudiced by Christianity. There was no Christianity at that time. So they were thinking and reasoning individuals. And they wondered how we got into this kind of religious mess and prejudice. So that was how new thinking came. Okay. So because, you know, where did all those developments take place? Those developments took place in Europe only. So Greece, Italy, Athens, they're all in Europe. So that was called Renaissance. Okay. So people critiqued Aristotle. In critiquing Aristotle, something new emerged. Because Aristotle was like an encyclopedia of his age. He wrote on every subject, on everything. Okay, so it was his entire system of knowledge that was subjected to criticism. Okay, you understood?
Yes, sir. So the voices that were suppressed in the olden days, they were again.
Exactly, which was called a dark period. Which was called a dark period, where there was no rational thinking. So Renaissance was flowering of thinking, and scientific revolution, series of new discoveries that questioned Aristotle, that questioned Christianity. Okay, Enlightenment thinkers read Greek and Latin scriptures. For example, Thomas Hobbes was responding to and translated Peloponnesian War. So he studied Thucydides. So there was a huge gap in which not much of thinking took place. So when we study political thought, we study Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, then drop. Then we start with Thomas Hobbes or Machiavelli Maxim. Nothing in between. There was no thinking. It was during that period Islam flourished. So when we think of modern world, we think of modern world from 1500 and its ancient roots, Aristotle's, and skip the Muslim period in between. Probably if Muslims took us to a new stage, maybe our political thought would have been different. Our history would have been different. So it is the West is ruling and we are tracing their origins. It is like that. If Muslims continue to rule, our understanding of the world would have been different. So Islamic thought is checked out in this process. Naveen.
Sir, what are the major contributions from the Arab other than Islam?
That is very interesting. The contribution according to the present story is that they made the West realize their ancient roots. It is like that. Renaissance did not mean knowing from Arabs what they learned, rather what they accumulated from the past. It was like that. At least I have no idea. At least this is the story we are following.
So
Because
actually,
just one second. Because Renaissance meant going back to their old roots, Socrates and Aristotle and Plato, like that. Nothing to do with Islam. So my point is, if Islam is ruling, the history of the world would have been different.
Power shapes knowledge.
Power shapes knowledge. But of course, why they lost power and why the West gained power has some basis.
sir, is Renaissance pending for Islam? I mean, does that make sense?
Is Renaissance?
Has to happen for Islam, or is that pending for Islam?
I mean, what should happen for Islam?
No,
What should modernization happen for Islam?
No. So I'm saying whether the Muslim community or Islam, they have to realize their roots.
No,
Is that not needed?
I don't think the problem with Islam is they should realize roots. The problem with Islam is they should move away from the roots.
Get rid of the roots.
Get rid of the roots.
That one single prophet as final is the problem for that,
So that is the
that
issue.
claim that he is the final
He
prophet.
was the last and prophet. So it is not like going back. See, Christianity, you see, they didn't go back. Renaissance did not mean going back to Christ. Going back to Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, not to Christ. Meant freedom from the religion, not rediscovering the religion. What was scientific revolution? It was a fight against religion, fight against belief. Many of them would have been called heretics and would have been burnt alive. Some narrowly escaped. So it was not rediscovery of Christianity. It was moving away from religion. So these were the main developments. Renaissance, going back to very ancient days, scientific revolution, enlightenment, industrial revolution, colonialism, and the whole world changed. This is what happened. So is this sequence clear? Now we'll go to industrial revolution. Okay. What are the prerequisites for industrial revolution? See, prerequisites mean huge advances in technology. Technology advance, which meant science advance. And also advancement in agriculture. Agricultural productivity should go up, because only when agricultural productivity goes up, fewer people would be tied to agriculture, so that the remaining would be occupied in urban occupations.
Slide is not visible.
It's not visible.
No.
No, slide is not visible, but my write-up is visible, right?
Yes, sir.
Just go through write-up now. Urban occupations. So technology improvement, which meant science improvement, agricultural productivity. So these things. And what happened during that time? Okay, now it is visible, right?
Yes, sir.
I myself reduced the size. So new colonies happened, which gave push for trade, and new crops productivity went up because of hybrid seeds and fertilizers. 3 times more grain in 1830s than in the previous century in England. And also there was a rise in population due to fall in death rates. In England, population quadrupled in a century after 1850. That is between 1750 and 1850, population 4 times multiplied. Basically due to improvements in sanitation and vaccination. Okay. And because of the trade, paper money came, stock market, managerial expertise came. Why? Because of trade, merchant classes. So these things provided a background. And why this took place first in England? Why in England? In all these things, England was in a preeminent position. For example, its colonies spread around the world, because of which it had experienced traders. It had capital for investment. Bank of England existed since 1603 with stock market. and economic philosophy of non-interference in business, lower tariffs, and funds were allotted to transport. Okay. But how could this be possible, be it stock market or non-interference in business, funds for transport? These are all related to politics. Glorious revolution took place, because of which power shifted to parliament, and parliament consisted of property owners, be it landlords or businessmen, and they were in a position to formulate policies that were favorable to business and economic growth. So democracy, that was glorious revolution, contributed. And next, there were important raw materials. England had coal, it had iron, and very importantly, it had cotton from India. And many machine innovations took place. And very important machine was a steam engine. He said steam is an Englishman. Okay. And also there were many rivers connected by canals, which made internal transport very good. The first railroad in England developed in 1820 and steamship in 1860. These things contributed to security of goods. Okay. So political system, importance to business class, right economic ideology, raw materials, colonial experience, appropriate human resources, and appropriate economic policies, and banking on raw materials, coal, iron, and rivers that can be connected for transport purpose. Okay. And then they maintained these industrial techniques as state secrets. The knowledge of machine design and technology spread to Northern Europe and US only after 1820. It means for around 70 to 60, 70 years, Britain had monopoly over many things. But after that, things have spread. Okay. So this is how England was in the forefront of industrial revolution. Okay. Okay, I'll wait for a few minutes. Tell me, is this point clear?
Yes, sir.
Why England was? What do you think is the most important reason? I gave many reasons. What do you think is the most important reason?
Political stability.
Political system. Okay. It is not stability as such, but political system. One can be stable and yet be defective, isn't it?
True.
So glorious revolution in that sense contributed, because glorious revolution enabled a better economic ideology. Okay. For example, when you read Indian experience, now Portuguese came first, then Dutch, then French, but basically British won against all of them. British East India Company won against French company. Why? British India Company was better managed. It was less controlled by the government, whereas French company was not like that. So political system enabled right kind of economic ideology. And that economic ideology and economic power gave rise to military power. Okay. And then it spread all over the world. Huge colonies. Huge colonies gave it a very big advantage. Because what is basically the difference between Britain and all other European powers? Colonialism. Britain is not just one island. The British rule was there all over the world. So colonialism. But it could get those things right because of the political system at home was superior compared to absolutism in France. So that is how political system is linked to economic system, and political and economic system is linked to military strength. So Britain was a huge power. And when it lost colonies, its power also was gone. Why did power shift from Britain to US? Because Britain lost all colonies. Okay. Is it clear?
Sir,
Hmm.
the Southern America was not colonized. Sorry. No, I got it. I remember. It was part of Spain.
Hmm.
It was part of Spain.
Hmm.
No, I just wanted to ask whether
America
had any colonies.
at that time was not America now. America now is a result of many acquisitions. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? So can I go to the next slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. See, I want to discuss something related to democracy. Democracy became an important form because of Industrial Revolution. One may wonder, what is the connection between Industrial Revolution and democracy? How are they connected? This one and another. Industrial Revolution is also responsible for ideology of socialism. Is another. So how is this technological thing related to these two important political ideas and systems? First idea, democracy. How did democracy become important? Democracy became important. It was like this. People before Industrial Revolution were in a highly localized conditions, localized, tied to families. Industrial Revolution gave factory. So people come to work in factories. And then Industrial Revolution gave rise to new classes of capitalists. middle classes, many urban occupations, working classes, and lot of mobility. Okay. So it means people were brought out of their traditional occupations and traditional what are called guilds, their economic associations. So it is something new. And in the beginning, the situation of the workers was very bad. Worker situation was very bad. Children were employed. Heavy labor they were subjected to. Workers' conditions were bad, or very poor. Okay. So it is under these conditions certain issues were raised. So they could get organized and issues raised. It is in this context that franchise widened. One man, one vote became an important slogan. One man, one vote. It was much after one man, one vote. Women also came to be given a vote. So family system changed, work organization changed, and there was exploitation, lack of concern, and people got together and raised their demands. And so power shifted from non-working or idle classes to workers and various others. Because before the Industrial Revolution, property was a very important qualification for vote, and without property there was no vote at all. Even in French Revolution, there was no universal adult franchise. So things became different. So this is how social change took place. Urban occupations, non-manual work, migration. Okay. And poor living conditions, poverty, no welfare measures, very poor sanitation. Okay. So these were the conditions, very poor conditions. And then things started changing. For example, Factory Acts of 1819 and 1833 limited the employment of children. But even after those acts, it was legal for 9-year-old to work for 8 hours per day. Before these acts, 7-year-olds would work for 12 to 13 hours. But you may wonder why children are employed here. Children are employed because of their flexibility in the work. They could be employed for lower wages, and they were more flexible to work under certain conditions like mining and other things. They were hazardous, but they would work in a flexible conditions, and they would work for longer hours. So that's why children employed. There was nothing like education of the children. So it was only around this time education of the children became important. As death rate of the children reduced and each child became important and their education became important. Okay. It was also around this time contraceptive practices began since 1820s. It means technology intervened in reproduction process, and technology intervened in mortality rate reduction and life expectancy increase, child becoming more important and education becoming more important. Okay. And all this meant more mobility. Mobility also gave more sexual freedom. Okay. So city life itself was a source of freedom. So new professions as a source of respect. So all these things gave rise to the idea that we also demand rights. Okay. So the traditional, conservative, hierarchical, with little opportunity to improve life was all shattered. So these gave conditions to democracy. These gave conditions to democracy. Okay. And after that, these conditions expanded in what is called Second Industrial Revolution. Now, what is this Second Industrial Revolution? First Industrial Revolution was by steam, and the second by petroleum and electricity. Petroleum and electricity. So in the 1870s, German, American, and French researchers developed generators and transformers. Electric railways came by 1890s, and an internal combustion engine run by petroleum invented in 1876. Automobile came in 1880s. And then between 1760 and 1860s, standard form was private partnership, limited to few people. But then joint stock companies came and ownership and management separated. And by Second Industrial Revolution, leadership role shifted from Britain to Europe and US. Europe and US. Okay. So all these things meant more urbanization, labor unions formed for better terms, and by 1914, better working conditions resulted. So by the last third of 19th century, most of Europe as well as all males got right to vote. By 1914, in all the countries, males got right to vote. Again, not females. And when all the males got right to vote, which meant illiterate people, ignorant people, then the importance of political campaigning increased. And for that purpose, political parties became important. So, in that sense, democracy changed. Okay. So this is how technological and political institutions are interlinked. Okay, please. Now you can ask me questions. Tell me, did you understand the link? Or was it too abstract?
Understood, sir. Understood.
What is it? Abstract?
Understood.
Understood.
Understood, sir.
Understood. Tell me, why is it clear to you? I mean, why should it look obvious? Can you imagine the situation?
It is
Visualize.
Yeah, visualize that. It is.
Visualize. How do you visualize?
There was a period of suffering, then demands come from that suffering.
That is true.
There was a period of.
But you mean to say it was because of suffering only, or because of something else also?
Because of the system already in place, transfer of power to parliament.
That was there. No, what I mean to say is that wasn't a new situation created. For example, a person moving from village to town. Person
Yes.
in town is different from a person in village. Isn't it so?
Yes.
He moved to town, some new life, and he is meeting similar people under similar conditions.
One voice, same
One
problems.
voice, labor
voice.
unions, same conditions, demands. Okay. So the earlier tradition was being broken. You know, in the growth of Indian freedom struggle also, it was industrial working class that became first conscious of nationalism and not agricultural laborers. So industrial working class is more politically aware, more politically radical. Okay, so they are in a new situation, in a different situation, more likely to be organized, more aware, and more vulnerable to change. Okay, so society is changing. Society is changing, and before that, certain ideals were talked about, like equality and things like liberty, freedom, things like that. So they talked about, when they were talking about only at the elite level. But then industrial revolution meant people at lower levels also could demand. So that was how one man, one vote came. Otherwise, it was said that if you didn't have property, it means you didn't have a stake in the system, and so you didn't deserve to vote. But all those things changed. Okay, so nobility and clergy became less important, or the aristocratic positions or positions came by birth became less important because people were earning certain positions through their work and through their merit. They could change their class positions and new classes were being formed. All this applied pressure on the political system for more rights. So that was how one man, one vote came. And much later, it resulted in rights to women also. Okay. So tell me, is it clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Deepika, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then one last topic that was on socialism. Okay. Naveen, do you have any questions on this?
Sir, I was just thinking Locke and Mill had their ideas on democracy also.
Locke and Mill. Okay.
So, I mean,
Locke and Mill. Okay. Locke and Mill. Locke did not talk about universal adult franchise.
no, but he spoke of representative government.
Representative government. They believed that the people who didn't have property did not have a stake in the system. In fact, if you remember, there were people called levelers during English Revolution. Some of them proposed that everybody should have a right to vote, and Cromwell and others were shocked. How can you say something like that? So American Revolution did not give all males voting rights. Why American Revolution? French Revolution did not give. They went about de-Christianizing and they did all kinds of things, but they didn't think of giving votes to everybody.
Yeah, right, sir.
Because their idea was that if you didn't have property, you didn't have stake in the system somehow. But there were people who did not agree with it. So at a very early stage, there were people called levelers who shocked Cromwell. And after that, if you remember, they rebelled and they mutinied and all of them were killed. or their leaders were killed.
Yes, sir. So suppose now in the contemporary world, democracy is one major idea.
In
But if we,
contemporary world, universal adult franchise is one major criteria, major aspect of democracy.
yeah, right. But if we look at the famous thinkers, could be Plato, Aristotle, even Mill, they all rejected the democracy.
That is true. I mean, they thought that there were problems with democracy. But remember, Plato, Aristotle, or Socrates, not that they were not wrong, but it is that they were not thinking of this legislature, executive, judiciary, and merit-based bureaucracy. They were thinking only in terms of people deciding. That was the democracy they had in mind. Democracy now is not simply people's rule. People elect, but you have a judiciary, you have a constitution, you have bureaucracy merit-based. So these are not running on popularity. They are running on something else. So Plato's criticism may be still valid, but Plato's visual was not this democracy. This democracy introduced merit into the working of democracy. This democracy is populism, popularity plus merit. It is not popularity alone. Is my point clear?
No, sir.
Hmm?
No. Once again.
No. When Plato or Aristotle were critiquing democracy, what was the idea they had? Their idea was people ruling, people and their representatives, and nothing more. They didn't have something like legislature, executive, judiciary, separation of powers, checks and balances, and merit-based bureaucracy. They didn't have all these things.
No constitution, idea of constitution.
They had a constitution. Aristotle was working on constitution, but essentially the separation of powers, checks and balances, those things were not there. But even after all these things, their criticism has some truth. There's no doubt about it. But their idea of democracy was much crude than what it is now. That is the point. Ours is not democracy, pure democracy. So many merit-based elements were given. For example, why do we say chief minister works at the pleasure of the governor? What is pleasure of the governor when chief minister is the elected person? Because we believe that the popularity is not everything. That is it. And president has the right to dismiss prime minister. Why? We believe prime minister has to go by the constitution. These are not democracy. I mean democracy as popular will. No. Are you following?
Yes, sir.
So why do we have 356? Why do we have president's rule? Why do we say prime minister works at the pleasure of the governor and president can dismiss prime minister? I mean, chief minister at the pleasure of the governor and prime minister can be dismissed by president. Why do we have these provisions? These are the ways by which populism can be contained. Lok Sabha, Raj Sabha. Why Raj Sabha has a different term and not as a permanent body? Ways to check populism. These are all the ways by which abuse of democracy can be minimized. But even then it can be abused. That is a different matter. So we did not go for democracy in the sense that is by the people, of the people, for the people. No. There are so many checks and balances put in. It is to preserve, it is to bring in as much merit as possible and not let the system be hijacked by populism. No, do you follow? Now, do you follow, Gayatri?
Yes, yes.
So these are all the ways by which populism is checked. Okay, so you can elect, but those elected should go by the rules, and rules are not made by them. They can make some small modifications, and that too within certain limits. It means people don't have complete power. Yes or no?
But what is happening, what can happen only to a point, no, sir. After some time, even those rules also can be twisted.
Can be, but it is designed in such a way that it is not just populism, it is not just democracy, but institutionalism and many other things, fundamental rights, many other things. It is just not that the people want this to be done at this point of time, and so they can do anything. It is not at all like that. That so few people and few positions are given power so that the system is not hijacked by people's will. Yes or no?
It is there, sir, but it is
No,
there.
that is how it is designed. That is how it is designed. How much it can be abused and how it is being abused is a different issue. But still remember, with all
Design-wise,
this,
yes.
without all these checks and balances, things would be far worse, definitely.
Yes.
Things would be far worse.
Yes.
These people have to think in terms of how to get over them. How do we tame judiciary? How do we tame these institutions? How do we tame press? So many
Yes.
things.
So the process is delayed.
Exactly, they may be delayed and
Their abuse can be delayed.
delayed or reduced or whatever. So many checks and balances are there. Okay. So what we're saying is that what Plato and Aristotle had in mind is different from what we have now, because democracy now is much more evolved system. Okay. So now last is about socialism. Okay. So can I go to the next topic? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, last. Okay. How is the issue of socialism also linked to Industrial Revolution? Industrial Revolution showed what is a very early form of capitalism. Early form of capitalism, very early form. It is to this very early form of capitalism people responded. Okay. Those who responded and proposed some different ideas are called socialists. Some of them are called socialists. And Marx and Engels, who finally became popular as socialists, called these early socialists as utopian socialists. Utopian socialists. They are, for example, Saint Simon, Robert Owen. They are called utopian socialists by Marx and Engels. Why so? These early socialists said situation bad. Okay, Marx and Engels would agree, and it should be improved. Marx and Engels would agree. Okay, and these early socialists felt that all will cooperate in improving. All will cooperate in improving, including all classes. Whereas Marx and Engels think this is not possible. Why so? Because Marx and Engels think that there is class conflict, one class and another class in conflict. And according to them, these people will be poorer, miserable, and so revolt. So they called this scientific socialism, because they think that's what science of history. Okay. So other socialists or early socialists believed, they didn't think in terms of conflict. They believed that a better society is possible because everybody can understand that this present system is not good for any, and so a better system is possible and good for all, which Marx and Engels believe it is an utopia. If you don't think in terms of class conflict and don't think in terms of revolution, and if you think that everybody will change because the system will improve, that is a utopia, according to them. Okay. But otherwise, the early forms of exploitation under capitalism gave rise to new ideas on how we should live. Whom do we call socialists? The people who propose more equality or better distribution, okay, better working conditions. It is those people who are called early socialists. Okay, for example, this is what Marx and Engels called these people early socialists. Early socialists. Engels, in his book Socialism, Utopian and Scientific, okay, wrote this. This summarizes their position. The undeveloped state of class struggle as well as their own surroundings causes socialists of this kind to consider themselves far superior to all class antagonisms. They want to improve the condition of every member of society, even that of the most favored. Hence, they habitually appeal to society at large, without distinction of class, by preference to the ruling class. For how can people, when once they understand their system, fail to see it in the best possible plan of the best possible state of society? Hence, they reject all political and especially all revolutionary action. They wish to attain their ends by peaceful means and endeavor by small experiments, necessarily doomed to failure, and by the force of example to pave the way for the new social gospel. So, no revolution, incremental and experimental, and no conflict. So, who are these people? One of them is Saint Simon, 1762, 1825. Auguste Comte, one who coined sociology, was his secretary for some time. He influenced many others, Proudhon, Mill, Marx, Engels, and Weber. He was imprisoned during French Revolution for some time, but finally released when Reign of Terror ended. Okay, his argument was there were two classes, industrial class and idling class. Industrial class was being threatened by idling class. For example, in the context of French Revolution, one can say nobility and clergy were idling classes, and others were industrial classes. Remember, capitalist who is working is also an industrial class. Scientist is an industrial class. Manager is an industrial class. Industrial class doesn't mean only manual laborers. His proposal is that government should reduce idleness. Okay, so this is one main proposal. And next, he called for hierarchical merit-based organization. This is bureaucracy. Society should be based on scientific principles. And he was influenced by Adam Smith, advocated less interference from the government in economy. Okay. and he believed systems should be based on scientific understanding of man and society. So he's an advocate of scientific approach to the designing of the systems. Okay. For example, he said like this: the astronomers only accepted those facts which were verified by observation. They chose the system which linked them best, and since that time they have never led science astray. Okay, so what is socialism? Socialism is about the concern for the workers, plus here in Saint-Simon's approach, scientific approach. And then he believed that the system should work for the less privileged. In one of his famous statements, he said in the New Christianity, in this book New Christianity, he wrote, the whole of society ought to strive towards the amelioration of the moral and physical existence of the poorest class. Society ought to organize itself in the way best adapted for attaining this end. Okay. So socialism to Saint-Simon is not about means of ownership. It is not about means of production, owning means of production, not about class conflict, but about taking care of the poorest, designing the system in such a way that the poorest are taken care of, and this should be designed on the basis of scientific principles. And another thinker was Robert Owen. Robert Owen, 1771 to 1858. He became rich through textile mill at New Lanark, Scotland. And the speciality about this textile mill was he offered much better working conditions. Okay, and yet made it very profitable. Interestingly, Jeremy Bentham became an investor in this company. He was very progressive. He supported child labor legislation and free schools. He said character is not made by, but for the individual. Character is result of the circumstances, which meant education is important, because at that time there was no education. And children were made to work for many hours. Whereas in his company there was education, and children were being educated. Okay, and then in 1817 he gave this slogan of 8 hours labor, 8 hours recreation, and 8 hours rest. Okay, so these things make him somebody who can improve working conditions of the laborers and yet make the business profitable. Okay, that is one part. But then he had some other ideas. This makes him closer to socialism. He felt society should be organized in terms of communes, is what he said. Something like 1200 to settle on 1000 to 1500 acres. They should have a common kitchen. And parents to raise their children only up to age 3. And after that, only occasional access to the children. So he thought of society in terms of certain communes. So no private property to any family. In fact, even socialization of the children also is not family business. And if this is a commune, unions of them federatively united shall be formed in circle of tens and thousands and thousands, tens and hundreds and thousands. So he believed in communes and interconnected based on certain common interests. So this was a radical idea. And he did try to implement this in US. He moved to US in 1824. He addressed US Congress in 1825, outlining his ideas. Okay, 3 of the former presidents and 3 of presidents to become listened to his ideas at the time. And he set up a socialistic community at New Harmony, Indiana. He attracted over thousand. It lasted for 2 years, dissolved in 1827, became a failure. Why? Many people came, scientists, educationists, workers, but all were given same privileges, same facilities. Some people worked and many didn't work. There was no incentive system. Some felt that others were simply lazy. So it failed. Okay, so Robert Owen's experiment in community living failed. And many more communal experiments took place on the basis of Owen's ideas. But as of now, no such experiment turned out to be a successful one. Okay. So what is of interest here is that when Marx and Engels call Robert Owen utopian socialist and call themselves scientific socialist, how are they justified? In fact, this is an experiment in socialism, and through experiment he proved that that is a wrong idea. So this is scientific socialism. Why should this be called utopian socialism? Okay, so to Marx and Engels, whoever don't agree are unscientific. Otherwise, Owen's community experiment itself should show that there is a problem with socialism. And anyway, all these people are influenced by French Revolution. Okay, Saint-Simon, Owen, and of course Marx and Engels, because their argument was French Revolution's ideals were good, but somewhere it took violent turn, and it turned out to be a disaster. And so we should think of how to realize the ideals of French Revolution. Was the idea. I mean, that was the line of thinking. So all of them were trying and in variety of ways. So these were called, you can call them early socialists rather than utopian socialists, as Marx and Engels called. Okay, so you can see that this was rejected, and later Russian Revolution and Chinese Revolution took place, and Cold War and other things. So you can see at a very early stage of Industrial Revolution, say by 1850, so many ideas were explored in political organization as well as economic organization, and in terms of how the society itself should be organized. Okay, thank you. So now tell me, so was this socialism clear to you? So don't you think this is scientific socialism?
Yes.
And provable and proved wrong. What do you want?
Marx should have stopped there.
Exactly.
And then he made the history to repeat.
In fact, he didn't learn the lessons of French Revolution. In French Revolution, so much of violence. Violence should have been the lesson. Why did people kill each other so much? So, in fact, Owen's experiment was very clear that it was, with so much wealth, wealthy people, knowledgeable, rich people couldn't get along and live on so many hundreds of acres of land. It was a disaster. So there was no incentive system. It was an experiment. So how can they say they are scientific and these people are unscientific? It is they who are unscientific. Okay. So any questions? Thank you. You listen
Sir,
to me. So many classes over so many months.
that is true.
14 classes. So when did we start?
I mean, that is fine, sir, because like even I don't know how about others. People were may not be very serious also, like attending these classes. Modern history anyway kind of neglected topic.
Exactly. Because not many questions. But only one question appeared this year, 21. What happened between World War I and World War II? We read them elaborately. Germany, Italy, USSR, Japan. You can write 4 countries.
So this
Problem with this area is least returns. You have to read so much and only 1 or 2 questions.
Sir, now 125 essay every year essay is coming on history, and modern world examples are.
That is true. That's true. In fact,
But
modern
that-
world examples can be given in ethics paper also, in ethics international.
Mm.
No, if modern world is taught so that it can be used anywhere else, then that is useful. If you want, if you expect questions strictly in modern world, then it is a different issue.
But questions on history, last year essay has been there, this year has been there. It's this year also it's there.
Yes.
No, but they are not purely questions.
This gives a base.
Base.
Base to understand. Base to understand polity also. For example, do we debate in terms of why these institutions are there, why populism is a threat, what actually is not democracy, what are the issues with democracy? We discussed many things. For example, today we discussed why chief minister is at the pleasure of the governor and the prime minister at the mercy of the president. Isn't it?
Yes,
or why we have president in the first place.
Yes, sir. Sir, we have listened to Marx like by so many people. Okay, but no one tells that Marx was fundamentally wrong.
Exactly, that is true.
They say 100 critics on Marx.
Exactly. Did you watch that my that video on essays?
Yes, sir, I watched.
I demolished everything.
I watched.
The history repeats itself is wrong, and as a tragedy and as a farce is completely wrong.
Sir, exactly, that is true. And yeah, I mean, this idea of like rejecting something. I mean, no one takes that stand.
Exactly.
Even in case of Marx, like they criticize Marx on behalf of some other scholars.
Exactly. Somebody else's criticism.
Somebody else's criticism. So,
for example, when somebody does this utopian socialism, they will just explain why it is utopian. That's all. They won't say somebody called and whether that label is fair or not. Actually, I followed one Pakistani man explaining. I was very happy. It was a reasonable summary. But he just explained why it is utopian. Why it is utopian? Because Marx and Engels calls it, because it's so and so. Marx and Engels is scientific. There is no independent judgment regarding who is scientific and who is utopian.
Exactly.
In fact, these people are committed to science. This is a scientific method.
True.
Okay, then.
Sir, Marx,
Deepika, please.
Marx called them utopian, and he thought that because they were ignoring classes.
Class struggle. Utopian in the sense that people won't agree. Why would people agree? You are only dreaming. It is in that sense.
He thought that if he could bring in the class aspect.
Yes, there is a class conflict and you should struggle, and only through revolution socialism would come. Whereas you think that people would agree to socialism because it was a better system. No. So it is in that sense, it is utopia. Utopia means that is not possible. Why will you think? Why do you think like that?
Because it failed, he said. He said so.
Yeah, of course. And he thinks it will fail, not that because it has failed. He thinks it will fail.
And he thought that by introducing class struggle,
Class conflict, one day he is going, so socialism will come because that is science.
without basis.
Without any basis. Not only without any basis, there is no criteria also by what time that should come. At least in Owen's thing, there is a criteria. You are putting up a tent and then when it fails, it fails. You are at least demonstrating whether it can succeed or not. But in Marxian case, where is the demonstration? Where is the experiment? Where is the proof?
Experiment was later and it failed.
Okay, costly experiment. Very costly experiment.